Hello and welcome to 1992, a Premier League channel, and I have Jonathan Wilson with me today to look forward to the new Premier League season. We're going to go through how we see the season going. We're going to do some predictions as well and just have a nice little chat about how we see the Premier League shaping up in the 25-26 season. Now, I'm really excited to do this. I can tell Jonathan is on the edge of his seat, looking forward to it as well. I'm delighted that he's agreed to do this with me. We're going to try and preview the Premier League every single week. But of course, to do that, you have to go through the general predictions and go through the Premier League the week before first. And next week, we'll be back previewing all the Premier League games. But this week, we're just going to focus on how we see the season in general going and talk through everyone's transfer business. Because, Jonathan, it has been an exciting transfer window so far. Maybe not for some teams, but I think generally it's been an exciting transfer window.
Oh, that's definitely true. I mean, are we really ranking transfer windows? But this has been one of the best transfer windows of Premier League. Sorry, I'm just distracted. Is that a picture of a dog in an Arsenal shirt behind you?
No, it's my dog in a Villa shirt. Someone got it me as a strange wedding present. My
Ah,
dog in a 1982 Villa shirt.
okay, that makes sense. Is this Tebow? Or is this a different dog?
So it's Tebow.
Tebow,
It's
excellent.
Tebow. We've got unbelievable Dan Bardell knowledge from you in week one, Jonathan. Absolutely sensational. You've not lost any of your sharpness since we last did shows together.
I'm just excited to be back. I'm buzzing to be working with you again.
Everything you've said so far, I don't know whether you're being serious or being sarcastic, but I feel
No, do I?
the use of buzzing is probably sarcastic. But the transfer window, Jonathan, good one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of business done quite early, which I think is always a good sign. I think clubs who have thought about it, who've got the moves in place, who in that first week of July get players signed, I think that's generally a good sign.
Yeah.
But of course, the thing that sort of enlivened everything has been this search for strikers. Everybody's desperate for number nine, and I think number nines have gone out of fashion a bit. There was a sense that the most advanced football was being played with false nines or with goal scorers from wide. And the strikers have never gone away. If you look at any given season at the top five goal scorers in the league, at least three or four of them will be pretty traditional strikers.
Mm.
And then you have City buying Haaland and obviously winning the treble in the first season he's there. And maybe that persuaded people that, oh, with Guardiola's doing it, maybe we all need a number nine. You saw Arsenal last season that a lot of the punditry around them, and I think rightly, was they really miss an old-fashioned striker, partly because it was a sense they had to play well to win games, so they didn't have a way of winning games. I mean, they had the set plays, I suppose, but if it was a game where they were sort of 55-45 down, they struggled to sort of produce goals from nowhere, apart from the set plays. Whereas a great striker. You even think of somebody like Diego Costa at Chelsea.
Yeah.
The season they won the league under Conte. So many of those games are pretty even games, and he just burgled a goal from nowhere, and they won it. Or he broke the deadlock in a game where they were just starting to get a bit under pressure. The other thing with Arsenal was there's a load of games they dominated and didn't finish off. And maybe if Kai Havertz had been fit for the full season, maybe that wouldn't have mattered so much. I think Havertz maybe is more effective in that number nine role than people give him credit for.
Agreed.
But the truth is, you can't go into a season with only one player like that. And so the fact that they have signed Gyökeres, I've got my doubts about Gyökeres, but they have at least addressed an obvious need. And then we've got the Liverpool signing Ekitike, and we've got now this great carousel of Isak and Sheshko and who knows who else, Darwin Nunez, who knows who else might get dragged into that. So yeah, the great hunt for a centre forward has defined the summer.
Yeah, it's looking like Nicholas Jackson might be the latest one to be dragged into it. Just before we came on and recorded today, Thursday morning, he's suddenly looking like Newcastle's option. So it is going to change. There's going to be obviously more signings after we've done this preview show, so we can only talk about what's happened on August the 7th and before. But I think you're right that the striker market has been one of the kind of most exciting things about this window, and we don't know where Alexander Isak will be playing his football this season. I don't think he'll be playing for Newcastle in August. I think we can definitely rule that out. Does this get done? And if it does, is anyone going to be able to stop Liverpool? Because their business has been phenomenal so far.
I think it probably does get done. I mean, everything seems in place for it to be done. There was some concerns: could Liverpool really afford it? I think they've been, PSR-wise, in a pretty good position because of having spent so little. Well, essentially nothing apart from Chiesa last summer. So I think they bought themselves a bit of headroom there effectively. The fact that they've sold Diaz, the fact that now looks like Nunez is leaving, you add together their fees, that pretty much covers the Isak deal anyway. Newcastle, understandably, I think, are very reluctant to lose him because I think he looked maybe the best pure centre forward on form last season. Is he even a better player than Haaland? I don't know, but certainly last season it was not unreasonable to ask that question. But yeah, the fact that he hasn't done any pre-season training with them, the fact he's having to train alone, the fact that he was disinvited from the club barbecue, that's
Never
a bad
good
sign when you
Yeah.
no sausages for you, Alexander. You're banned from the grill. So I don't really see how that relationship could be mended sufficiently for him to play. Because frankly, if you've got it doesn't matter how good a player is, if you've got the option of you get 130, 140 million for him, or you get a sulky player who might not lift a finger, you take the cash and you try and get somebody who is young and enthusiastic and hungry. So I don't really see a way that doesn't get done. I can't see why Newcastle would take the sort of self-defeating stance of no, we're keeping him. I understand why people might think, clubs have to stand up to players. They can't let this be the way players behave. There's no point having a player of that value wasting away, not playing for you, his value diminishing. Just take the money now and sort of shrug and move on and make the best of it.
Yeah, if you don't do it now, he's not going to sign a new contract. So this time next year, you're in the position where he's got 2 years left on his contract. His value's plummeted, and you don't know what's going to happen with him for the season that's about to take place. So I agree with you. I think it gets done. I think there's no way that Isak doesn't end up at Liverpool and Liverpool hit the price point or hit the price point that's somewhere near what Newcastle are asking for. Liverpool have bought a lot of players after not doing anything in the last couple of transfer windows. Obviously, we can see where the fullbacks fit in. They signed Wirtz really early in the window. Ekitike, as you mentioned, is in as well. If Isak comes in, I know you've got to have a squad, but how do you see all those players fitting in? Because it's going to be difficult for Ekitike and Isak to play together in the current system unless Ekitike is going out wide.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if they do. I mean, maybe with the odd game where they play together, or it's useful to maybe be able to play them both late in a game, bring one of them off the bench. But the way Liverpool have played in pre-season, it's been much more of a 4-2-3-1 than they played last season. I think last season was sort of a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 hybrid. In as much as you can tell anything from pre-season, but sort of picking through that, it looks like even the notion of a first 11, I think, is not entirely relevant or accurate in the modern age. But it would appear Salah on the right, Gakpo on the left, Wirtz behind a centre forward. That has been Ekitike in several pre-season games, but you would assume Isak would take precedence when he comes in. But the great thing is they now got two of them. They can mix and match, and they can have Isak play for 60, 70 minutes, and then you bring Ekitike off a bench when the defenders are tired, and that could be devastating. If one of them gets injured, you've got the other one. You do have the option, as you say, if Ekitike can move wide, take some of the pressure off Gakpo. I think that's potentially extremely exciting for Liverpool. You do just worry that they've changed too much too quickly.
Okay.
I'm aware what I'm about to say could sound slightly trite, could sound slightly insensitive, but would they have made as many changes if Diego Jota was still around? And obviously, that tragedy. First and foremost, it is a tragedy.
Of course.
But you do have to think, from a football point of view, you do have to think of the ramifications for the team. And they were probably going to sell Darwin Nunez. He didn't seem to fit into Schlott's thinking at all. Luis Diaz, if he was, I don't know if he did feel uncomfortable in England, but it suddenly just seemed to happen this summer that it was, he's going to leave. He fancies Bayern. So I don't know if that was him driving that, whether that was Liverpool thinking, we can cash in on him now.
Contract based, I think he wasn't happy with the terms of his contract, that he'd not had a pay rise in the whole time he'd been there.
Yeah, but he clearly, Schlott preferred Gakpo on the left, and he was playing through the middle, and maybe that's not his natural role. So maybe there was an impetus there to move him on anyway. But then you do have this awful extra bit of business you have to do, an extra space you have to fill in the squad. So possibly if it hadn't been for what happened with Jota, they wouldn't have done as much business. Wouldn't have made as many changes to that forward line. Their hand's been slightly forced. There's always doubts whenever you make any change, and the more changes you make, the more doubt there is. So on paper, it's hugely exciting, but you don't quite know how those players will settle. It might take a little while, and if in that sort of 2 or 3 months while they're settling down, Liverpool drop 4-6 points, that could end up being decisive.
Yeah, two new fullbacks as well. Not really through choice on the right hand side, because obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold ended up going to Real Madrid, wanted to leave, but very different types of fullbacks to the stereotypical fullbacks we've seen at Liverpool over the last few years. Well, last 10 years probably.
Well, they're both very attacking, and I think Liverpool have had attacking fullbacks. I mean, they're both overlapping fullbacks, which I guess you'd say Alexander-Arnold tend to come infield,
Yeah,
which worked very well with Salah. So that's something. Salah's role, I think, in this new team, there's some changes there that he's, whether it's Ekitike, whether it's Isak, it's going to be a sort of pretty orthodox number 9 rather than a player who gets out of the way in the way that Luis Diaz did, or Jota did, or Roberto Firmino did.
yeah,
So that's a potential change. The fact that he's going to have a player going outside him, which actually should be beneficial because of the way he cuts in field. And Alexander-Arnold clearly did go outside him. I mean, he got hundreds of assists from crosses. So as much as he played as that inverted player, as that inverted fullback in midfield, having Frimpong going outside him all the time, I think that will be a change. So it's a minor tweak. I don't think it should matter particularly. But both fullbacks very attacking. With Wirtz playing as at the front of midfield rather than Szoboszlai, that makes them more attacking. So that's another concern you might have. Do Liverpool have the same balance? Do they have the same defensive quality they had last season? They still haven't replaced Fabinho, which I think last season, before the start of the season, everybody was a little bit short of a number 6. Gravenberch and McAllister both played exceptionally well at the back of midfield. Their roles, but I mean McAllister particularly, I think McAllister's a very versatile player. Somebody who's very good at adjusting his role according to the match situation. That he can play very deep, he can push further forward, he gets goals. I think his role this season is going to be much more defensive. So possibly you lose some of what makes him quite such a special player. And also, what happens to Szoboszlai?
yeah.
I mean, of course, having the squad helps. There could be injuries. There will be injuries. Wirtz can play wide if he needs to, so Szoboszlai can come into that more attacking central midfield role. Maybe Szoboszlai plays slightly deeper in some games against teams who sit deep against Liverpool. They give themselves more creativity, more sort of dribbling thrust from deep than McAllister gives them. Possibly that's on Schlott's mind. But I think if I was Szoboszlai, or I was Szoboszlai's agent, I'd be thinking, not entirely comfortable with my role in this. So that's a potential point of friction. But we'll see what happens there. And you do slightly wonder whether they're short of a centre back with Quansah and Joe Gomez leaving, just in terms of cover. And I know in pre-season both Gravenberch and Endo have played some games as centre back.
That's not sustainable.
Maybe in games where Liverpool expect to dominate possession, it's a little bit like Mascherano playing at centre back for Barcelona. They think we'll control the ball and we'll defend by doing that. But yeah, you would worry about that against physical direct teams. That doesn't seem like something you can get away with.
Yeah, Quansah's gone, hasn't he? Joe Gomez injured again, and Konate's not massively reliable at staying fit either, so it does leave a lot of pressure on Van Dijk. But Liverpool in a phenomenal position. If you look at their squad depth, they've pretty much got 2 teams now, and it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, to stop them winning the league this season. But a team that will try again, they do. Arsenal, Jonathan. Interested by what you teased at the start of the show by saying you're not fully convinced by Gyökeres. Why is that?
Yeah, look, he's had 4 great seasons in a row. He's been prolific. 2 seasons for Coventry, 2 seasons for Sporting. He's 27. He's coming into what should be his peak years. My concern is that he hasn't had a prolific season yet at the highest level. Okay. And it's not that he's played at the highest level and failed. He just hasn't had that opportunity. So, but that's a doubt. Talking to people at another Premier League club who looked at him, their doubt about him is, does he get his shot off quick enough?
Okay.
And they think in the Championship, in the Portuguese league, you have a little bit more time than you have in the Premier League. And they worry if you're a top Premier League team, a lot of the time, the majority of games, you're facing a low block, you're facing a mass of players, and you need your centre forward to be able to pounce on a half chance. or to be able to create a chance for himself in a crowded box. And they're not convinced, they're not sure. The reason that that club decided to look at other options was that Gyökeres, they felt was just fractionally slow at doing that. So it's something to keep an eye on. I mean, I still think I'd be surprised if he doesn't score at least 10, 15 goals. But that I think will be something that just might be a little concern.
Yeah, I've seen people. I'm not going to go at you here. People level at that he's only played at the Portuguese league and the Championship. A lot of good Premier League players have come from the Portuguese league, and look at PSG. They've got a few players from that league. If you look at Manchester City, the team that won the treble, a lot of players came in from that league as well. But I take your point on the timing aspects. I actually think he might be eased in as well. I'm not convinced he comes in and starts the season for Arsenal. I think it might be the new beefed up version of Kai Havertz that starts the season. Have you seen a picture of him? Have you seen?
No, I haven't. Is he bulked up? Is he?
That guy has hit the gym hard in his injury absence. He looked absolutely huge.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Arteta still likes the idea of Havertz as a number 9. So whether that's the first choice, but yeah, it would make sense. You start with Havertz because he knows the system, and Gyökeres is phased in. But the point about the Portuguese league is, yeah, you have very good players there who come into the Premier League and adapt very quickly, but some don't. And the
Yeah.
point is, there's a doubt, there's a question mark. It's not that all players in the Portuguese league are bad and none of them ever adapt. It's that you have to look at the fact he's been getting 20 odd goals a season there and in the Championship and say, well, it's only the Portuguese league. There is no guarantee that translates. That's the point. That it's just, yeah. And I think that's where you have to go through and look at his goals, look at his finishing, and try and assess: is he scoring the type of goal that a club in the Premier League would need him to score? And you look at, say, Darwin Nunez, who looked amazing in Portugal and has not translated at all for Liverpool.
Yeah, that is a fair comparison. I was about to say Jonathan Wilson hates the Portuguese league. Why does he hate the Portuguese league? I was going to go with that with the title for the for this show, but you've rectified it with a good point on Darwin Núñez there. That is fair, but I do think at times Arsenal have just been missing that bona fide number 9. And there's games at the Emirates when they're kind of knocking the door down, but they've got nobody to get on the end of the endless crosses that come into the box, or they desperately need a goal. That they let silly games go last season, and you think with a genuine number 9, less of that might happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's been a handful of games, but I think the game that stands out last season was the game against Villa, which was the end of January, wasn't it? That game,
Yeah.
And earlier in the afternoon, Liverpool had scored twice. Actually, Darwin Nunez had scored twice in injury time at Brentford, in a game where Liverpool absolutely battered Brentford. Looked like it was going to be 0-0. Nunez gets the 2 goals in injury time, and Liverpool suddenly get 3 points rather than 1. And then the Arsenal Villa game was the 5:30 kickoff.
Yeah.
And Arsenal were 2-0 up, absolutely cruising. And then they had 10 mad minutes in which Villa scored twice. And I think Yuri Tielemans hit the post as well in that spell.
After the first goal.
So they could easily have lost that game 3-2 when they were a better side for 80 minutes. They just had 10 bad minutes. But that's the kind of thing that Arsenal, for some reason, under Arteta, tend to do. And so you have a situation where it had looked at, it's sort of 4:55 or 4:50. Arsenal fans would have been thinking, we can close the gap by 2 points here, to suddenly the gap has grown by 2 points. It's sort of a 4-point swing over the sort of a 4-point emotional swing, I guess, over the afternoon. And that I think was the moment at which you sort of thought, Liverpool aren't giving up this lead. And Arsenal, even if Liverpool do stutter, and they did have a little stutter, didn't they? They had that game where they played quite badly against Wolves and they had a couple of draws. So there was a stutter there. And if Arsenal had been breathing down their neck, putting pressure on, who knows what might have happened. But Arsenal weren't putting the pressure on, so Liverpool just sort of picked themselves up and went again. Yeah, they had that draw against Everton, didn't they? There's that little spell end of March where it just looked like they got a little bit weary.
Do you think overall their business, does it get them closer to fulfilling that dream of winning the Premier League? I feel like they haven't necessarily bought lots of players that are going to get in their best 11. I feel like I'm obsessed with best 11s on this show, and I'm not. But they have filled kind of voids that needed filling, and you do feel like they're a bit more of a rounded squad now.
Yeah, and the danger is they sort of did that the previous summer as well. It's sort of, the squad is better, but is the team better? I think the one player who does make them better as a team is Upamecano.
Yeah, of course.
I think he's a player who should not only is he good in his own right, but he should get the best out of Declan Rice. I think Declan Rice is better when he's got a bit more freedom, when he can drive forward. I think I mean, I sort of generally dislike the it seems a very English obsession, a very British obsession with your midfielders have to be getting 6-8 goals a season. But I still think Declan Rice should get you 6-8 goals a season. And one of his great gifts is his stamina, that his capacity to make those late runs. We saw in the Real Madrid game, he's got a great long range shot on him. So he can be that sort of Brian Robson, Steven Gerrard style figure.
Yeah.
But that type of player needs a sort of tactical mind alongside them to fill the gaps when they do go searching forward. I think Mendy's the perfect player to do that. So that I think is a signing that makes him stronger. But yeah, I know what you mean about the other signings that Madueke. If they do get Eze, I think that's a big thing. If Eze comes in, that does make him stronger. I think he's better than Martinelli. So
Do you think he'd play? I've spoken to someone about this the other day. Eze comes in and plays left-hand side. Really, you need a left-back that side that would bomb on and maraud forward. And I think Arsenal have got a lot of fullbacks, but I don't think they've got a left-back that can do that. So I'm not sure that works necessarily.
Yeah, there'd have to be some readjustment, but I don't know. I'd sort of have faith in Eze to almost as a more of a. I know what you mean. You'd have that space out in the left wing because Eze would naturally drift in field. But I mean, Eze has played at left wing back for England, so
God,
I'm
times.
I'm not suggesting that's a great plan. I'm not suggesting that's what Arsenal should switch to. But I think what that does show, just because he played a particular way for Palace doesn't mean he can't play in other ways. I think you'd want him drifting in because I think that's what he's really good at. But I think he could hold his position out there. Yeah, but it's a fair point that their left-sided fullback tends to invert. So maybe then you have to do something with Declan Rice that he would be the one who pulls outside. Madueke, I think the price is astonishingly high for Madueke, but I think he makes sense partly because he can play on the left as well. I think he obviously prefers the right cutting onto his left foot. But it does give him an extra option. It means that, I think Saka has been massively overplayed.
Yeah, really so.
I think my biggest criticism of Arteta over his 5 and a bit years at Arsenal is he's just played Saka far too much. And I fear that Saka might be one of those players, a bit like Raheem Sterling, who gets to sort of 27, 28 and just looks exhausted. Somebody to take the pressure off Saka, I think, is just a good thing. Madueke is a good player.
I like him.
There's obviously a lot of potential there. I think the concern about him is that he dribbles with the ball quite a long way out in front of him. This is what somebody at Chelsea explained to me why they think Jamie Gittins obviously plays on the other side, but that Gittins, his centre of gravity is more over the ball, when Madueke has it's easy to dispossess because the ball's out in front of him. We've seen him play well for Chelsea. For England in those 2 terrible games in June. It's not a high bar, but he was England's most effective attacking player in certainly against Andorra. So yeah, I think there's definitely a player there. It's not been fully realised yet. So I think, while the fee felt probably 10, 12 million too high, it makes sense in it strengthens the squad in an area where it really needs strengthening. And equally, Norgard coming in just gives them a bit more defensive cover. That's a very useful thing to have. So, I think Arsenal's squad looks better. I think they've addressed key areas. Whether that, I don't think the squad is as good as Liverpool's looks like it will be. I don't know. But they've improved where they needed to improve.
I've got a sneaky suspicion as well that Mosquera may play some games at right back with Gabriel and Saliba in that team, and Skelly obviously at left back. I think that's a solid defence, and they've still got the likes of Calafiore, Ben White, who aren't getting a game. I feel all around the pitch that they're pretty well set, Arsenal, and if they can get that left hand side sorted, they really have had a brilliant summer. Let's talk about Manchester City then. It feels like years ago they got their transfer business done for the new season because of the Club World Cup. I'm still not sure what I think of Man City at the moment. Have they solved the problems of last season with what they've done in this summer?
I'm really not sure.
Hard to judge, isn't it?
And you look at the 4 players they brought in January, and Marmoush looked excellent. Marmoush settled very quickly. He looks like he's going to be a really good Premier League player. The other 3 of them, I think, Nico Gonzalez particularly, significant doubts about. Victor Reich has been loaned out already, hasn't he? So
yeah,
and they do seem to have this policy of they've sort of gone back to a slightly old-fashioned model of signing very young players. I know there's been an increasing tendency for clubs to sign sort of 20 to 23-year-olds but it's like 23 is the new 27, that everybody's looking at resale value. And that's had this sort of paradoxical effect that it means the price of 23-year-olds has gone up and the price of 27-year-olds has gone down. So they've got exactly the same problem with resale value. It's just happening 4 years earlier in players' career. And I think, weirdly, there might now be value in signing 27, 28-year-olds because everybody's so obsessed by resale value that they're not looking at what can this player actually do for us for the next 3 or 4 seasons. But you look at the players they brought in, like Tierney Reinders, I haven't been that impressed by him when I've seen him. He's obviously a good player, but is he that level of player? Ayat Nouri, I'm not sure he's the most disciplined fullback. It seems like a slightly strange Guardiola signing.
Yeah, I don't get that one. I feel he's the kind of player that goes to Manchester. Every time a left back goes to Manchester City, they don't play. It just feels to me, I feel Guardiola will get frustrated with him in certain ways, like you've just said.
And they'll end up with Guardiola playing there.
Yeah, back there, back you
because
go.
that's where he always ends up. You're right, Cherky's clearly a hugely talented young player, but he's very young, he's unproven. And I if you look at how careful Guardiola was at bringing through Phil Foden, is he going to do the same? I mean, that Cherky's maybe slightly older than Foden was when we were getting concerned that he wasn't getting enough game time. But it feels like a lot is going to be asked of him when he's still pretty young, pretty inexperienced in his career. So there's a doubt there at the very least. James Trafford's a good keeper, but he's going to be backup. So they've spent a lot of money. They've brought in a lot of players, but I'm not sure how many of those are oven ready.
Yeah.
So Guardiola's a genius. I think he's maybe slightly past his peak, but that doesn't mean that he's massively in decline. He's just, I think you got to accept that the age he is, the fact he's been 17 years in the job, in his mid-50s, a little bit of the energy will have left him. So it may be that he can take this raw material. There is an argument, his type of football, the very precise demands he makes of players, the very systematized nature of his football, that young players who are more biddable, more malleable are actually what he needs. He doesn't need players who've got their own ideas of how to play. But you still think that's a project that takes time. So I'm not sure how quickly they'll settle. And they've also obviously had the complicating factor of the Club World Cup, which means their pre-season has been running on a different schedule to perhaps what they'd like. So I think there's a lot of question marks there. And if there's any manager other than Guardiola, you'd probably be saying like no chance. But Guardiola is such a genius that, yeah, there clearly is a chance.
No sign they've made there that makes me think, wow. No massive wow factor in anything they've done. And look, the players may turn out to be some of the best players we've ever seen in the Premier League. But I agree with you; it feels a bit bitty, and I don't know how much we can read into the Club World Cup. But some of their problems that they had last season were still apparent in the Club World Cup, even with these new players.
Yeah, I mean that Al Hilal game where they lost, it's the same problems you'd seen in the cup final against Palace, and obviously they did stabilise that last couple of months of the season. That it wasn't, they had that, what was it, October the 31st when they lost that game to Spurs, and these 5 in a row, they win, is it 1 in 13 they won? They just only won the Forest game in that run. They do sort of get it back to an extent, and you have to give Guardiola credit for doing that because it looked like they were in free fall. But I think they've lost a lot of their aura. I don't think teams are going to go to the Etihad and be scared this season. I think people are going to think there's vulnerabilities there, and it'd be fascinating to see where Guardiola is in his career. That it may be that this is a new challenge, having to build a new team. Maybe that it re-energizes him and he sort of enjoys a great autumn to his career. Or it may be that sense of fatigue that I think you could really detect last season. That interview he gave to GQ last week, where he's saying that when he's finished at City, he's going to have a long break, and say it might be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, all the way up to 15 years. That's a man who's already thinking of a holiday he's going to have in 2027. I'm not sure that's the bloke I want rebuilding my football club. Yeah, but he is Pep Guardiola, and so he is the man you want rebuilding your football club. But be interesting to see what his sort of mental, emotional, psychological state is, whether that fatigue that we saw last season lingers, or whether he is re-energized.
Let's talk about Chelsea, Jonathan, the world champions. Got a bit of momentum now, it feels. Kept a manager for more than one season. I'm not sure that's ever going to catch on at Stamford Bridge. Looked good in the World Club Cup final, really, really did. I thought João Pedro was excellent. Cole Palmer was obviously excellent. But with Chelsea, do they know when enough is enough? Just as you feel they might be kind of getting the balance right and getting things going, they'll go and sign another forward and try and throw them in there. But I actually think it's the other end of the pitch that's still not quite right for Chelsea. how can they not have a proper goalkeeper still? How can it feel like they haven't got that commanding lead or that proper centre back as well? So I think there is still failings in that squad, despite the array of attacking talent that we see.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, I think Sanchez is fine as a keeper. I mean, he actually had a very good Club World Cup final. It was his distribution.
Did he? I thought
Yeah,
some of those saves, they were so like just standard saves that I felt it was a little bit overhyped.
I'm not so much talking about the saves. I'm talking about
Okay.
the way he was popping the balls over Nuno Mendes' head, and that was clearly a plan. And the first goal comes precisely from that. And then he sits too deep, and that's why Cole Palmer suddenly has so much space for the second and third goals. So that's a plan that can only work if you've got a keeper who can play accurate 60-yard passes, and he can. So I don't think he's a top level goalkeeper, but he's got great distribution and he's good enough at shot stopping that I don't I know what you mean. I think it's an area where they could upgrade.
They
I think
tried to as well, didn't they?
well, there's been some link with Donnarumma, who's going to the last year of his contract with PSG, and yeah, they've signed Chevalier. So I don't know if anything's happened with that, but that would seem quite. They clearly still have money. That would seem a logical move, far more logical than getting in Xavi Simons, who I think is an excellent player. But why do we need another left-sided forward?
Yeah, where?
They've got Pedro Neto, they've got Jamie Gittins. João Pedro can play on that side. Yeah, they seem to be sniffing around Garnacho as well. That I think there was some talk of a swap for Garnacho and Nicholas Jackson. With money as well. So they seem determined to sign at least one more winger, but it's a club that already has loads of wingers. And I think the point you were sort of hinting at the beginning there, João Pedro is a player who, at the Club World Cup, suddenly that team makes sense. His movement, his ability with his back to goal, his finishing. Yeah, Cole Palmer looks alive again. And also he's mobile enough that it creates space for the two wide players. I think they look really impressive. But you're right. The determination to add even more players to that. And who knows how Gittins will fit in. Neto played really well as that sort of auxiliary wing back in that game. That was one of the tactical triumphs of Maresca. Obviously, you wouldn't want him doing that every game. But I don't know what it does to players' psychology when they play really well doing an unfamiliar tactical role. And the next thing you know, we've signed another player in the opposition and we're trying to spend another 80, 90 million on yet another one. And so the sort of churn at Chelsea, I still feel is unsettling for everybody. But if that performance against PSG shows what they're capable of, and if they can play that well against a team who beat every Premier League club they played last season and look really good in the Club World Cup until the final, then you've got to have them as one of the favourites for the title. And the fact that I think they're fourth favourites with the bookies.
Yeah,
that's where. Yeah, if I'm looking for value, that's where I might be looking.
Yeah, I think the way they set up in that final, obviously it took PSG a little bit by surprise, but Gusto was given the licence to just really push on from wing back. Palmer then kind of inverted and made himself almost like a right 10, and the way he dovetailed with João Pedro was a joy to watch. Playing that way as well, you're going to be able to get Enzo, Lavia and Caicedo into your midfield if you're shifting Palmer out to the right, but then you're not taking away what he's good at because, as I say, he's allowed to play as a number 10. Then Neto was holding the width on the other side. They looked really, really good, but they don't know when to stop Chelsea. But is that what that you think? Obviously, the ambition is probably always to win the title, but do you think they could pose a title challenge?
I don't see why not. I mean, if they're good enough to win, I know it's only the Club World Cup, and you can't. It's very hard to know how seriously we should take that tournament. But they were so good in the first half of that. Well, throughout the final, but particularly in the first half of the final. I thought Reece James had a great game at the back of midfield.
Yeah, that surprised me.
And if his fitness, I think, is a big thing because he can play fullback, he can play centre back, he can play midfield. He's such a tactically smart player. If he has sorted out his fitness issues, he's a huge asset for them. You talked about that midfield and whether it's Reece James at the back or whether it's Lavia, Caicedo. The fact that Enzo can then play slightly further forward, I think
he's better at doing that.
He's a really clever player, but he also is good at winning the ball back. So if you've got that very clever, tough tackling midfield three, it's a really hard, whichever three from those four you're perming, that's a really hard tackling, defensively solid three. That's going to make Chelsea very hard to break down. And it also gives Cole Palmer that freedom, whichever the sort of 18 options they have on the left. And you've got João Pedro. And if João Pedro isn't quite working out, you've got Liam Delap, so you can go a bit longer, you can go a bit more direct. they've just got so many options. Somehow, amidst this astonishing sort of this blizzard of players who've come in, there is a very, very solid, coherent core has emerged, and I think you have to give Maresca a lot of credit for that. And I know fans have been, I mean, as Leicester fans were pretty dismissive of some of his football. They found it a bit dull, found it a bit boring. If they've got a centre forward who's going to score them goals and going to take some of those chances, yeah, fans are, if you're 1 or 2-0 up and holding possession and not taking risks, they're absolutely fine with that. And a lot of the problem last season, I think, was less that the football was overcautious. It's just they didn't have a finisher. And a lot of those games where felt frustrating for Chelsea, they had 25, 30 shots. They just hadn't scored any of them, or had scored one of them. Well, if you have João Pedro taking the chances, then that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, he's a really clever footballer. João Pedro kind of brings the best of Delap and Jackson and something extra in just his own game. That's how I felt when I was watching the Club World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, very very versatile. Yeah, a lot of different attributes. He's good in the air. He's good with his back to goal. He's a really good finisher. His movement's very good. He can pull out to the left. So I think to be I was talking earlier about the sort of the way football's fallen back in love with the number 9, but the modern number 9, it has a far greater range of abilities than your sort of 1980s number 9. That he's good in the air. He's mobile. He can finish. His movement's good. The sort of the players that we've been talking about on this carousel. I mean, Gyökeres is 6'2", I think. Isak 6'4", Šeška's 6'5". But they're players who, they don't feel sort of like big lumbering centre forwards because they're so quick and so lithe as well. So they've got that heading ability, but they're not like a Niall Quinn style target man who you basically just got a position there. Chest control will be great. We'll nod it down, but he's never going to pull out to the wing. He's never going to make those runs in behind the fullbacks. The modern number 9 has to be able to do the sort of Niall Quinn job, but also be able to make the runs in behind the fullbacks and work the channels and get out of the way to allow other players into that space in front of goal.
Yeah, and I've mentioned him bringing in some of the traits of the other Chelsea forwards. If any Chelsea fans worried that they won't get any red cards if Nicholas Jackson goes, I think João Pedro always carries the risk of a red card as well. Let's talk about then the 5th favourites for the Premier League this season, Jonathan. Any ideas who I might be talking about?
Well, I know it's Manchester United because it's me who told you this. So I can remember a conversation we had 2 days ago. But
I'd forgotten it was you that told me that.
It's astonishing. I mean, it just shows how many United fans there are. I guess there's 2 different questions. Could Manchester United finish 5th this season? Yes, I think they could. Are they the 5th most likely team to finish first? I think that's a slightly different challenge. Look, they haven't got any European football, so that's a huge plus. That one of the problems Ruben Amorim had last season was he had very limited time on the training pitch. Well, this season he's going to have time because he's going to have a lot of midweeks. He's had all of last season and the summer. So if this squad is ever going to have his ideas instilled into them, it will have happened now, and it will happen this season. My concern with them is they haven't really changed the squad very much. Now, of course, I was saying earlier, you got to be careful making too many changes at once. I think that's a bit different when the squad's as bad as Manchester United.
Just finished 15th.
But you'd have thought the logical thing to do, when the whole problem is our manager plays a very specific style of football this squad's not suited to, is get your changes done really quickly, give him from the beginning of July to work with them. And they haven't done that. They've brought in 2 players so far. And it's just as much of a concern as the fact they've only got in 2 players. And in fact, it's 2 forwards, whereas it feels to me midfield, deeper in midfield
number 6
is where their big problem is. But they haven't really got rid of anybody either. I know Rashford's gone to Barcelona. I know there's the 3 players who came to the end of their contracts. So Johnny Evans has retired. Christian Eriksen and Victor Lindelof have gone. Of the bomb squad, of those 5 players, 4 of them are still there. And part of the skill of the technical director these days, or director of football, it's not just buying; it's selling. Chelsea are really good at it. Chelsea are really good at getting profits on players they don't really want anymore. United are terrible at it. And the fact that Garnacho is still sitting there, that Jadon Sancho is still sitting there, that Anthony is still sitting there, that Tyrell Malacia is still sitting there. What's going on? And that means that's not freeing up revenue to bring players in. But the absence of a number 6,
it's a huge hole.
Yeah, Ugarte should be good enough to play there, but nothing we saw last season suggests that. And then that Ricky made against Everton in pre-season, that suggests that he hasn't had some great epiphany that he's suddenly become the player that they need. So I don't really know how that system works at the minute. Is the idea Bruno Fernandes plays deep, but then you need
Looks
somebody
like it.
very aggressive, yeah, very hard running alongside him. And then you think, well, where does Kobe Mainoo fit into that? Yeah, he's a player who barely played last season. I think Amram had doubts about his suitability. I know there was injury issues as well, but such a gifted player. And yet it's a club that doesn't seem to be able to find a role for him, but equally they don't want to let him go because he's one of these many young players who, United in a desperation of nominated as the Messiah. Oh, this is the kid who's going to lead us back to glory, which is absurd pressure to put on a teenager. But I don't know where he fits in that side. If he's going to be one of those the two sort of inside forwards in the 3-4-2-1, which maybe he could do. I think probably he should be slightly deeper. Maybe he could do that. Why are they signing all these forwards? Where's Matthias Cunha going to play? Where's Brandon Burma going to play? If they do bring in Sheshko, and then they've got Xerxes, they've got Highland. They appear at the moment to be doing what seemed absolutely impossible, which is take the world's most incoherent squad. It looks like they're making it more incoherent.
It's quite clear that the focus seems to be on the front three because it's going to be if Shesko signs, it's going to be a brand new front three. I presume Ahmad might play as a right wing back because I think he's probably got to be in the team somewhere. But I don't mind Bruno in the number 6, but I think you need a sure thing next to him. Not saying João Paulinho, but Spurs have signed João Paulinho on loan, a proper defensive midfielder. I don't see that in the makeup of Manchester United's squad. The no European football thing will inevitably help, but I still just don't see how they rise from 15th to top 5 looking at them now.
I could see them just about finishing 5th.
Okay.
I think there's other teams. I think there's a lot of teams who would be challenging for 5th who have not had great summers. Villa, Spurs, Newcastle.
Yeah.
So I think finishing 5th might not actually be that hard this season. I think there's an obvious top 4, the 4 we talked about, and I think then it's a scrap below that. I could see things clicking for United. I could see them just about nicking 5th. But we talked about how Chelsea have this incredibly solid core in the middle of midfield. United's the opposite. Bruno Fernandes is a very, very good footballer, but he's a creative footballer. He's not going to be somebody who's putting in big tackles. He's not going to be somebody who, if you're an opposing team, you're going to think, well, how are we ever going to get through him? Whereas you look at Chelsea, Christ, if we get through Caicedo, we've got to then get through Lavia, and we got Enzo snapping back, or maybe we've got Reece James in there. United's the opposite. It's sort of, you can just sort of wander through that. I find that baffling. I think Liverpool can get away with, and maybe even get away is a slightly overly negative term, but they can contemplate a game where they play with a lot of technical players because they can trust themselves to hold possession. And we saw they were very good at holding possession in games last season and just sort of taking a bit of a breather, controlling matches. I can see that they are good enough to defend with through possession. United aren't good enough to do that. And also that forward line, if it is Cunha and Burmo, Sheshko, that's a forward line that needs to play in transition. They need to be winning the ball back, getting it forward quickly.
Yes.
Amad Diallo is a player I really like. I thought he was really good at Sunderland. I think physically tiny, but doesn't seem to matter. But at the same time, if he's your right wing back, if you're the opposition, you're going to put somebody good in the air on the back post on your left. Are you going to be knocking in big diagonals? And you're going to be challenging that space to the right of United's right-sided centre-back, where they're probably going to have Martinez, who's not a big player, 5'10". And Amad Diallo is your backup there. It's just an obvious weakness. Big players wandering in at United's back post to get on diagonals hit from the United left, from the opposition's right. It's just such a glaring thing that bad teams, any team can do it. You don't need to be a good team to whack a big diagonal to a big bloke at the back post. And it's a glaring issue they're going to have. So I don't see how it fits together at all.
No. I mean, it'll be interesting at the very least. I think we all enjoyed watching Manchester United for differing reasons that people have enjoyed watching Manchester United over the years last season. I think it's going to be an interesting watch this season. Just a quick prediction. Do you think Amorim sees out the season?
Well, that's a good question.
Thank you. That's what I'm here for.
I'm going to say yes, but almost by default.
Okay. Stubbornness from Manchester United. They're wed to it and they can't move away from it.
And I think they will improve. I think they'll be top half this season. I think
Yeah.
they probably will qualify for Europe. And I guess you can paint that as progress. Well, it is progress. I mean, you finish 15th and you then finish 6th or 7th. That's that. You can't expect realistically to go from 15th to 3rd or something. So, yeah, I guess you say what are his realistic aspirations, and I think it probably should be qualification for the Europa League, maybe a bit of a run in the cup, and I think that he's capable of achieving that. So yes, I will say he will see out the season.
Okay. And we spoke about before we came on about being disciplined and keeping the show for 40 to 45 minutes. And we've not been disciplined and we've not kept it to 45 minutes. But I think now we can label this as the big season preview. I think once you hit an hour, which is what we're going to do now, by the looks of things, you can label it a big season preview. You touched on Newcastle, Villa, Spurs, all had difficult summers. Villa are kind of coming out the back of that now because they're going to sign Evan Gasson, lovely French accent from myself, who will fill a problem position for them. Out the three, who do you think's best set to do something? Obviously, Thomas Frank at Spurs. Now, Newcastle have had one of the worst summers going. We talked about Liverpool's summer being one of the best. Newcastle's has got to have been up there as one of the worst.
Yeah, I mean, Villa's is, I guess it's been a bit of a nothing summer so far, rather than a bad one necessarily, because they haven't sold anybody either, have they?
No, it's the loanees not coming back has taken the shine off the squad a little bit because they were a big part of the second half of last season. But if Gasson comes in, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I guess if Emi Martinez stays, that's a good thing. I mean,
He's going to be now.
It looked dead set he was leaving, but yeah, as you say, it now appears to be that he is staying, and I think that's a good thing. I think not just his ability as a keeper, but his personality is useful for Villa, if not necessarily kind of pleasant for the rest of the league.
Might help with the Europa League as well.
So, I mean, to an extent, it depends how they adjust to the Europa League, how seriously they take that. I mean, they should take it seriously because they can win it. But maybe you don't have to take it seriously till after Christmas.
Yeah.
And if that's less of a drain on them than the Champions League, which it ought to be, then there's an extra year of playing together, as long as there's no staleness sets in, and as long as they do bring in players to replace the lone players. I'm basically just repeating what you said. I don't see why they can't finish fifth, but yeah, there is a sort of slightly anticlimactic feel. I'm interested by their PSR position as to just how close they've pushed that line. So that might explain some of the lack of activity. Spurs, I think they've done okay. I mean, obviously not getting Morgan Gibbs-White's a blow, but you look at their first 11, it looks pretty decent. James Maddison being injured is clearly a blow. But I think Polina gives them something at the back of midfield they need. Hopefully Archie Gray will get his chance at the back of midfield, because I felt very sorry for him last season. Really promising kid, but he's just been asked to play 100 different positions. Not really fair on him. He did okay as well. So I hope we get to see him playing the back of midfield. I think him and Sarr together, I think potentially is a really good pairing there. And I think Thomas Frank's a very good manager, but his record, if you look at what happened to him both in Denmark and then at Brentford, it took a little while for him to settle. The first 8-9 games, both his last two jobs, have been pretty poor. And I think there's a constituency of Spurs fans are not convinced by him. They think that Spurs should be above taking people from Brentford, which is obviously ludicrous. But there's a danger they become quite vocal if Spurs do have a slow start to the season, which is possible. And Newcastle, this should have been. They've just won the League Cup last season. They won their first domestic trophy for 70 years. It should be great enthusiasm. They're back in the Champions League. There's talk, albeit it seems to have gone quite quiet now, of a move to a new stadium. Everything seems to be moving forward. And then they're going to lose their best player, probably, with Isak. And the only player they brought in is Anthony Elanga. They don't have a director of football. Eddie Howe and his nephew are doing all the business. And not only that, but the fact that part of the funding that's going to allow Liverpool to buy Isak, if that happens, is coming from the sale of Darwin Nunez to a club owned by the Saudi PIF, who also own Newcastle. And so those concerns a lot of us had last season, I think we've seen Saudi Arabia generally with this Project 2030, the extraordinary investment. There has been retrenchment. Neom, the city in the desert, has been massively scaled back. I think their sport investment is much more focused on things that are happening in Saudi Arabia, so the Saudi Pro League, but also things like tennis and boxing and Formula One that they can actually host in Saudi Arabia, the World Cup that they'll host in 2034. That they're less focused now on the external stuff. When all the plans for the stadium were coming out towards the end of last season, it looked like, okay, they are still engaged, they are still interested. But that's gone very quiet. And now it looks like Newcastle might be part of this general retrenchment, which was the fear a lot of people had about Newcastle last season.
Yeah, tough summer. Not the summer that you want off the back of winning a trophy and getting Champions League football for the second time in 3 seasons. Really difficult summer so far. Obviously, by the end of the window, they might pick some players up, but at the moment, Newcastle not looking a happy place at all. Let's do our predictions then for the new season, Jonathan, and we'll start with the bottom 3 and have a little bit of a chat around that. What 3 teams have you picked to go down?
Sunderland, Burnley, Brentford.
Sunderland, Burnley, so no Leeds.
I hope one of the promoted sides stays up, at least one. I mean, it's obvious which one I hope stays up.
Which one, Jonathan?
But even leaving aside partisan leanings, I just think it's bad for football if the 3 promoted sides keep going down. So hopefully, at least 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 can stay up. That becomes less of a. It becomes that sense of a 17-team established Premier League, but 3 join and then go out, and then 3 join and then go out. That is not what the pattern becomes. So I just hope at least one of them stays up, and then and again, I'm slightly doing this obviously from the point of view of a Sunderland fan. You're looking at the other 2 promoted sides could be dragged into it. Who else could be dragged into it? You look at Brentford, all the changes they've made, and Burma leaving, Thomas Frank leaving, Wissa maybe leaving, Norgard leaving, Flecken leaving. They've been exceptionally good at replacing players in the past. Yeah, that doesn't always work. And so if you're one of the teams likely to be in that relegation battle, you're thinking, yeah, Brentford could get dragged into it. Keith Andrews may turn out to be a brilliant manager, but we don't know. There's a big question mark about that. Which other teams could get dragged into it? West Ham, I think, very easily could be dragged into it. That they seem to be struggling to get players over the line. I don't think that anything's really changed from the end of last season, which there's no great sign that Graham Potter was going to do great things there. And I think it's a club that can get down itself pretty quickly. You look at Bournemouth, maybe. I mean, they managed to keep pretty much all their forward line, but losing Kerkers and Howson. Yeah, I think that could hurt them, and you always
Zabani's going to go as well.
Zabani as well, yeah, that's right, yeah. So you always look at a club like that that's sort of overperforming, and you think, how sustainable is that? They can't really afford to make a mistake, so their recruitment's got to be very, very good. Maybe Forest. Forest feel a very volatile club that's with European football. And the fact Gibbs White staying is obviously an advantage to them. But I sort of feel Forest could finish anywhere between sort of 6th and 20th. There is that volatility there. Everton, I think, haven't had a great summer, but there should be lots of positivity moving into the new stadium. So they're the other clubs who might get dragged in. But I mean, fundamentally, I think the 3 promoted teams are all going to struggle. I think that's just the way it is. But to say the 3 promoted clubs would have been very boring, so I've stuck Brentford in there and taken out Leeds.
I've gone Burnley, Leeds, West Ham. I've got your boys to stay up, Jonathan. Impressed with their window so far?
Well, it appears they've had a very good window. If you'd asked me, on the evening of the playoff final, I'd have said no chance. But the way they've done the business, the way they've done it so early, the fact that they've managed to get in, I think, quite a good spread of young players and experienced players. I think Granit Xhaka could be a great signing.
Yeah.
Guiu coming in from Chelsea, somebody who has played a handful of Premier League games, has played in the Conference League. Looks a really good finisher. That's something that Sunderland were lacking last season. Seaman Adingra, I think
that shocked me.
Well, he was linked with Sunderland in January as a swap for Tom Watson. I think there's some questions about his commitment to training. Should we say? But I mean, I thought you had a great Cup of Nations. He's just an exciting player. Maybe the bright lights of Sunderland will lead him further astray. But it's a chance for him to sort of really cement himself as a Premier League player. Enzo Lefebvre's obviously made his loan move permanent. He looked really high class. Habib Diarra, I think, is a really interesting, exciting player. So I think there's a lot of players there who could be very good. And so I've now, having had no hope, I now have a glimmer of hope that Sunderland will stay up.
I think all 3 are quite like what they've done in the transfer market. I think they've given themselves a chance, but if you get off to a bad start, like the teams did last season, it's an uphill climb, isn't it? Because there's so many good teams in the Premier League.
Well, and I think the stats show as a promoted team, you have to take 8 points from your first 5 games to stay up, to have a chance of staying up. And Sunderland actually have quite a kind start. That they start against West Ham at home. They got Burnley away. They got Brentford at home early on. So I think there actually is a chance that they could pick up significant points in that first sort of 4 or 5 games. And if they are on 8-9 points after 5 games, then suddenly there'll be the belief that they can stay up. And the teams last season, straight away, this is going to be difficult, and then they ran straight into this fog where, oh no, we're desperate for results, we can't afford to lose this game. Whereas if you get 10 points on the board in your first half dozen games, suddenly you probably only need 25. You only need to go then 25 points in the last 30 games, say, and that'll keep you up, and that seems more manageable. You've got a little bit more leeway, and you're not under pressure to the same degree. The one issue Sunderland may have is they are going to lose potentially 5 players for Cup of Nations.
Yeah.
But if that gets you quality players for the rest of the season, I guess it's a gamble worth taking if you're club in Sunderland's position.
Yeah, home form going to be paramount for Sunderland, you think, and Leeds and Burnley. Obviously, if one of them can get home form right, they'll give themselves a chance of staying up. What does a Jonathan Wilson top 6 look like for the 25-26 season?
Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Spurs, Villa.
Oh, not too far away from mine. I've gone Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Chelsea, Villa, Spurs. We've got the same 6 teams there.
Just slightly different order, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So no Manchester United in yours and no Newcastle. How the teams you may expect to see in that top 6. Surprise package. I have put Sunderland down. It's a surprise package.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I weren't a Sunderland fan, I'd say Sunderland, but I'm just terrified of,
don't want to do it.
Tempting fate and getting egg on my face. I mean, I guess the very meaning of surprise packages is not easy to predict. Maybe Manchester United won't be as bad as we've become used to them being, and they will end up finishing 5th or 6th. Okay. Can you say Manchester United is a surprise package? That feels like an absurd thing to say, but
I think you can after they've just finished 15th. I think that's probably okay. I mean, it wouldn't be a massive surprise if they got worse, I suppose. So it probably would have been more of a surprise if they got better. So I think they qualify under the rules of surprise package. Who have you got down for top goal scorer?
Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I did the same. You kind of feel like he's got to get back to those levels of his first few seasons.
Well, I mean, even last
season you've had
City
4th, so you obviously think they're going to concede a lot of goals then.
Yeah, or maybe I just haven't really thought it through that carefully. Right. But no, I think even when City are playing badly, he still got over 20 goals last season.
Yeah, he's still going to get 20.
And I think Liverpool might share the goals out a bit more. Then, similarly, Chelsea have a lot of, Palmer will get some, Shep Pedro will get some. Arsenal, we've said, is it going to be Gyökeres, is it going to be Havertz? They spread the goals out a lot last season. So I think, Haaland to get 20 odd, and the other top teams to share them out a bit.
Player of the year. We've actually already mentioned who I put down for this.
Okay, who have you got down for this?
I put Declan Rice because my feeling was he could get double figures for assists and goals.
Yeah, that's possible. So
I didn't want to be Salah or, I don't know, just go for Wirtz in his first season. So I thought I'd go Rice.
Well, I think this will be a big season for Cody Gakpo. I think he'll get a lot of goals. I think he's a very good player. Slot likes him a lot. So I toyed with Gakpo. I toyed with McAllister because he's just a player I really rate, but
usually goes to the winner of the league, doesn't it? So,
but possibly him playing a bit deeper this season would be less eye-catching. And so, on the grounds it often goes to an English player, I've gone Cole Palmer.
He was in my thinking. Caicedo was in my thinking as well. I think he's a tremendous player, but I went for Rice. So we've both gone for English players for Player of the Year. Best new signing. Again, we've already mentioned who I put down earlier on in the show.
Well, I really hope it's Granit Xhaka, but I've gone for Florian Wirtz because I think he might be the first £100 million player plus who's actually worth it.
A lot of the 100 million pluses have gone wrong, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. I think this is the first one where you look at the fee. I mean, it's partly because of price inflation, but you look at the fee and you think, actually, for a player of that age, with that range of abilities, with that apparent sort of extremely calm, focused, dedicated temperament. I dislike going for such an expensive player, but I think he might be somebody who actually justifies that fee.
I went for João Pedro. I think he'll make a big difference for Chelsea this season.
No, I wish I'd said that. That's a clever answer. It's a better answer.
Thank you very much. Last one then, last prediction. First manager to leave, whether that be by hook or crook.
Either Graham Potter or Nuno.
I didn't say first 2 managers to leave, Jonathan. I said first manager to leave.
Graham Potter.
Yeah, that was my answer as well. They're in big trouble, West Ham.
Yeah. And that is a stadium that turns turns toxic pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they've lost. I'm not saying that they were wrong to do this in some ways because obviously they had a lot of aging players coming towards the end of the contract, but a lot of the backbone of that dressing room has gone. And when the chips are down, they're going to be looking for leaders, and I'm not sure there's someone there. And I just don't think the model of the club suits Graham Potter at all. I
Yeah.
really, really think they're going to be in for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, they've lost Kudus, Cresswell, Kufal, Michael
Fabianski,
Antonio, Zuma, Fabianski, Danny Ings.
yeah, a lot of experience gone.
Yeah.
I think that does us. Has it been good to preview the Premier League with me again?
Oh, it's
Stuff
yeah.
of dreams.
I feel it's like being a young man again. I've got a new lease of life. I'm out to buy some Converse or whatever young people do.
I mean, am I young? Like,
You're younger than me. You seem young.
I'm not.
Or do I mean immature? I don't know. It's one of
Immature
the
is
two. Yeah.
probably fairer. I'm turning 40 very, very soon. We should mention we're looking for a sponsor for this show, so we're going to be sending this show out to all kinds of people and trying to get a sponsor. But we will be back every single week previewing the Premier League fixtures, throwing some predictions in there as well. We'll get a predictions league and we'll preview every single Premier League game every single week. Obviously, some will be in more detail than others, but that's the ambition. So watch out for us. Get subscribed to the channel with your post notifications on, and give the video a like on YouTube as well, and leave a comment with your predictions. And wherever you're listening to this, if you're listening via audio, leave us a review, give us 5 stars, and get yourself subscribed. Can you subscribe to audio? I don't even know. Need kind of a tagline to end with, Jonathan. Have you got anything? I'm struggling.
You could have warned me.
Yeah, I've just thought of it now myself because I didn't know how to exit the show, so I've come to you.
What was that you used to say? You used to say something
Stay
about
safe, I used to say, but
stay safe. Yeah,
I mean, I do want everyone to be safe.
It's still good advice.
The only thing that's popped into my head, it's terrible and it's a rhyme, is this has been 1992. Thank you to Jonathan, and thank you to you.
Oh, it's lovely. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
good. Let's go. All right, then. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week.